It starts on Earth in 1957 in the Nevada desert. The United States was testing nuclear weapons underground. Back when science was reckless and safety was more of a suggestion, the project was called Operation Plumb Bob. And the specific test we're talking about today was called Pascal A. Now here's what happened. An underground chamber had been constructed 2,400 feet below the desert sands with a 200-foot tunnel leading to the surface. Inside this chamber, a nuclear bomb was set off. The bomb contained 1 nuclear warhead, 6 plutonium-239 cores, and it was detonated with 55 tons of TNT. Now, all that matters for our story today is that this explosion created a massive shockwave that traveled up through the tunnel and out to the surface. That shockwave, carrying with it radioactive material from the device, burst forth out of the tunnel and into the desert sky. That's bad enough by itself. But at the same time, a weather balloon attached to a series of high-altitude cameras was floating overhead. The device had been designed to take pictures of clouds at 65,000 feet above the ground. But instead, this time, it got a front-row seat to an atomic bomb going off. The radiation from the blast hit the camera system and fried its electronics. The balloon drifted aimlessly in the sky for days before finally crashing down somewhere over Utah. In the days after, the fallout began to make its way across America. And by the end of the year, 5 people were reported dead, all from fallout exposure. We don't know if they were the only casualties, but it stopped there. And that was that. Until now, no one knew about the fallout from Operation Plumb Bob that day in 1957, because it never made it to the surface. See, this isn't just a story about a nuclear accident. This is a story about the day humans accidentally destroyed an alien space program. The truth is, there were aliens visiting Earth in 1957, and they weren't hidden in the shadows or hiding among us. They were right out in the open, studying the world around them, preparing to take their next steps toward interstellar domination. Their technology was advanced beyond our wildest dreams, and their ships were so far ahead of anything humanity had ever seen that we wouldn't even recognize them today. I know this sounds crazy, but it's true. What we thought was a Cold War arms race between Russia and the United States was actually a 3-way race, and the Russians knew it. For decades, the United States government has tried to cover up the existence of extraterrestrial life and the fact that we've been visited by intelligent alien species. But in 1957, things were different, and I can prove it. On July, the New York Times ran a story about a secret meeting that took place in Washington, D.C., between government officials and scientists. At this meeting, the Russians revealed something shocking to the Americans. They claimed that the United States was being visited by flying things which were not made on this planet. In other words, aliens. And it wasn't just the Russians who were seeing these strange objects. American pilots had witnessed them too, and the British were aware of it as well. But the most shocking revelation was that the Russians said they were in contact with these beings. They had actually met with them and established communication. Of course, the United States didn't believe any of this. They thought the Russians were lying. But what if they weren't? What if there really was an alien presence watching us from afar? Could it be that they were already here, living among us? We'll never know because shortly after the meeting, the Russians cut off all communications with the Americans. Something had happened, something that forced them to abandon their plans for first contact. Whatever it was, it caused an international incident that could have led to World War III. And although the U.S. government did everything they could to cover it up, there were witnesses who saw what happened. People who knew the truth. The first witness was a man named Philip J. Corso, a physicist and professor at Brooklyn College. Corson was one of the men present at that top-secret meeting in Washington, D.C., where the Russians revealed their shocking claims to the Americans. According to Corso, the Russians came to the meeting prepared with evidence. They brought photographs and film footage of the alien objects that they had encountered, and they told the Americans that they had already been in contact with the beings. The Russians believed that these beings were highly advanced and that they posed a potential threat to humanity. They wanted to know what the Americans thought they should do. But the Americans didn't want to hear it. They dismissed the Russians' claims as nonsense and refused to listen. Corson later wrote a book about his experience called The Day We Met the Aliens, in which he described the atmosphere of the meeting as one of disbelief and skepticism. He wrote that the Russians were serious, but the Americans just didn't want to believe it, so the Americans left and the Russians cut off contact. But Corso knew the truth. He saw the evidence that the Russians brought to the table and he believed them. The second witness is even more fascinating. His name was Donald Keyhoe, and he was a major general in the United States Marine Corps. Keyhoe was in charge of the UFO section of the U.S. Air Force's Intelligence Office during the 1950s. His job was to investigate reports of UFOs and determine whether or not they were a threat to national security. Keyhoe investigated hundreds of UFO cases, and he believed that some of them were real. In fact, he believed that there was a massive government conspiracy to cover up the truth about aliens. According to Keyhoe, the government knew that there was intelligent alien life visiting our world, and they were doing everything they could to keep it a secret. He claimed that the government had recovered crashed alien vehicles and even bodies, and that they were keeping them hidden from the public. Keyhoe wrote several books about his experiences, and in one of them, he described a secret meeting that he attended. The meeting was about the Roswell incident, and it was attended by military leaders and government officials. According to Keyhoe, the military brass was adamant that the Roswell incident was not a cover-up. They said that there had been no crashed flying discs and no alien bodies recovered. But Keyhoe knew the truth. He said that the government was lying and that there was a massive cover-up underway. The third witness is perhaps the most compelling. His name was Edward Ruppelt, and he was the chief of the CIA's UFO task force during the 1950s. Ruppelt's job was to investigate reports of UFOs and determine whether or not they were a threat to national security. And according to Ruppelt, they definitely were. Ruppelt believed that there was intelligent alien life visiting our world, and that some of the UFO sightings that he investigated were real. In fact, Ruppelt claimed that the government had a secret UFO research facility called SkyNet, and that it was located in a remote part of the Nevada desert. The base was staffed by the best and brightest minds in the country, and their job was to reverse engineer crashed alien vehicles. Ruppelt also claimed that the government had recovered several crashed alien vehicles and that they were being held in a secret hangar at the Nevada test site. Ruppelt wrote a book about his experiences called The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, in which he described the secrecy surrounding the UFO research as being almost total. He wrote that the government was doing everything they could to hide the existence of aliens and that he was sworn to secrecy when he worked on the cases. According to Ruppelt, the government was so determined to cover up the truth that they even went so far as to fake evidence. Ruppelt said that the government would often plant false information in order to mislead the public and the media. These three men are just a few of the many witnesses who have come forward over the years to tell their stories of the day humans accidentally destroyed an alien space program. There were others who saw what happened that day in 1957, others who knew the truth. But unfortunately, their stories have been lost to time. Either that or the government did such a good job covering it up that no one remembers what happened. The only thing we have to go on is the physical evidence, like the film footage and photographs taken by the aliens themselves. Film footage that shows us the truth about what happened on that fateful day in 1957. Film footage that the government doesn't want us to see. Film footage that proves once and for all that aliens were here visiting our world when a nuclear bomb accidentally destroyed their space program. The government has done everything they can to cover up the truth about aliens. They've ridiculed those who come forward with evidence, calling them crazy or making fun of them. They've threatened anyone who gets too close to exposing the truth and have even killed some of them. But the truth is out there, and it won't be long now before it comes out. Because if the government continues to cover up the truth, then eventually they'll get caught. Eventually someone will come forward with evidence that's too much for the government to ignore. And when that happens, everyone will finally know the truth about what happened on that fateful day in 1957. The day humans accidentally destroyed an alien space program.